Picture the most powerful man on earth, on his hands and knees in a field, eating grass like an ox. That is the story the Bible tells about Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. But press a clay tablet from his own city, and a different man appears. Not a madman, a builder of the greatest city the world had ever seen. Almost everything you think you know about him is only half the story. The year is 605 BC. At a city called Carchemish, on the banks of the Euphrates, two empires collide, Egypt and Babylon. The Babylonian army is not led by its king, it is led by his son, the crown prince, Nebuchadnezzar. The result is written in the Babylonian Chronicle, pressed into clay by men who lived it. The Egyptian army was beaten so completely that, in the Chronicle's own words, not a single man escaped home. Then, in the middle of the campaign, a message arrives. His father is dead. The throne of Babylon sits empty, and empty thrones invite rivals. The ancient historian Berosus says the prince left the army behind and raced home across the desert with only a handful of men. What we know for certain is this. On the 7th of September 605 BC, a date preserved to the exact day, Nebuchadnezzar was crowned king of Babylon. He was home in 3 weeks. To the kingdoms of the West, he became a nightmare. In March of 597 BC, again dated to the day in the Babylonian Chronicle, his army took Jerusalem, captured its king, and marched its elite into exile. He placed a puppet on the throne. The puppet rebelled, so he came back. Around 587 BC, the records leave a year of doubt, Jerusalem was destroyed. Solomon's temple, the heart of the Jewish faith, burned to the ground. The Babylonian exile had begun, and his name entered the Bible as a curse. And yet, here is the strange part. The prophet Jeremiah calls this same destroyer Nebuchadnezzar, my servant. God's own instrument, he was not invincible. In 601 BC, he marched on Egypt itself, and his own chronicle admits the two armies, quote, inflicted great havoc on each other. He went home to rebuild his chariots. Egypt would never be his. But conquest was never the point. Watch where the wealth of an empire went. Not into more war, into brick. Millions of bricks, and vast numbers of them stamped, one by one, with his name, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, eldest son of Nabopolassar. Around his capital he raised a double ring of walls, with a moat fed by the Euphrates, a fortress circuit that archaeologists have traced for some 18 kilometers. The Greek historian Herodotus claimed the walls ran 90 kilometers and stood 100 meters tall. That was legend. The truth needed no exaggeration. This was arguably the largest city on Earth. Home, sources suggest, to somewhere between 50 and 200,000 people. At its heart, he restored Etemenanke, the ziggurat of the god Marduk, on a base 91 meters square, by ancient account rising as high as it was wide. Judean exiles lived in its shadow, and most scholars think this tower is what Genesis remembers as the Tower of Babel. He did not build that legend. He built the thing legends are made of, and in the north wall, around 575 BC, he finished his masterpiece, the Ishtar Gate. Walls of glazed brick, blue as lapis-lazuli, alive with golden dragons and bulls, and beyond it, a processional avenue lined with about 120 snarling lions. Its name was a warning, may the arrogant not flourish. What about the famous Hanging Gardens? Here is the uncomfortable truth. Later Greek writers credit them to Nebuchadnezzar, but not one Babylonian inscription mentions them, and no trace has ever been securely found. Some sources suggest the gardens were real but stood in a different city entirely, Nineveh. The greatest wonder of Babylon may never have been in Babylon at all. Which brings us back to the grass. The book of Daniel tells how pride broke him. A voice from heaven, 7 seasons of madness. The king driven out to eat grass, like an ox. It is one of the most famous stories in the Bible. But in the tens of thousands of Babylonian tablets from his reign, there is no trace of it. Nothing. Most scholars now suspect the story originally belonged to a different king, Nabonidus, who really did abandon Babylon for 10 years. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls is a fragment in which it is Nabonidus, not Nebuchadnezzar, who is struck by God for 7 years. Somewhere in the retelling, the affliction found a more famous name. The legend, sources suggest, borrowed his crown. So forget the madman. If you want to see the real Nebuchadnezzar, stand in Babylon at the New Year festival, the Akitu. 12 days of ritual, the creation epic recited by torchlight, and one astonishing custom. Sources suggest the high priest would strip the king of his crown, slap his face, and drag him by the ears before the god, and the king's tears were counted a good omen. Even here, the King of Kings knelt. Then the gates opened. Golden statues of the gods carried out through the Ishtar Gate at dawn, down the Avenue of Lions, the biggest city on earth roaring around its builder. This is the moment no camera ever saw. This was Babylon at its peak. It did not last. Nebuchadnezzar died in October 562 BC, after 43 years on the throne. Within 6 years, Babylon burned through 4 kings, at least one of them murdered. And in 539 BC, the army of Cyrus of Persia crushed the Babylonians in the field. Babylon's own chronicles claim the capital then opened its gates without a fight. 23 years after the great builder's death, his empire was gone. But here is the thing about building in brick. Empires fall, bricks remain. The Ishtar Gate stands today in Berlin, rebuilt around the original glazed bricks that archaeologists pulled from the sand. And in the 1980s, a modern ruler, Saddam Hussein, rebuilt walls on the ruins of Babylon, stamping his own name into the bricks, styling himself the new Nebuchadnezzar. Kings are still trying to borrow his crown, the way legends once did. The empire vanished in a generation. The bricks are still telling his story. If you want more stories written in clay and fire, subscribe. The next one is already being excavated.